Morning, everybody. Thank you. We're starting a little bit late. I don't know if the bus from Monmouth has yet arrived. But anyway, okay. Just to warn you that this meeting or this forum is live streamed for anybody, for benefit that anybody who's at home or wish to view at a later date, or yourself want to see how you look on TV. Who knows? So, and some photographs will be taken. If there's any objection, obviously, then we'll deal with that as it happens. Can I ask Peter Fox, Councillor Peter Fox, sorry, who's leader of Monmouthshire County Council, to welcome you here today?
Well, thank you, Chairman, and good morning to you all. It's really brilliant to see so many people here again. I think this is our third forum, and I recognise many faces, but there's some new faces here today. It's a really important forum. We're really pleased this is growing momentum, and so many people are coming along and taking part in such really important discussions. And today we know we're talking about health and well-being, and with some focus on mental health issues as well. And that really falls at the right time, recognising it was Mental Health Awareness Week last week from the 11th to the 17th right across the country. So today it's still absolutely relevant. We have these deeper conversations and understanding around some of the issues that you're facing, and a really interesting set of questions I know are going to be put to our colleagues who are going to help us understand better where we are. I just want to say, as leader of the council, just thank you very much for your commitment, that ongoing commitment to help us move forward in the right direction and help our other public service bodies to understand the issues, and together we can actually try to make things better for everyone. So just a big welcome from me. I'm going to sit at the back if there's any space. It's great to see so full, but I'll try and find a chair and listen to the debate. So just a big welcome and thank you, and look forward to perhaps talking to more of you at the end of the session.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Phil Hobson, Deputy Leader of Monmouthshire County Council. So you do have our ear today, obviously, as always. Just to go through some quick housekeeping rules for your benefit. If the fire alarm does sound, the fire exit is straight out the door there, and you turn to your left and there's a fire passageway. For those where a lift may prove to be a barrier, we do have trained people who will be able to assist you to get out of the building should that need to be the case. Toilet facilities, obviously, straight out the door and before and straight ahead of you. To my right is Penny Walker. Many of you will know from Monmouthshire Voices and lots of other organisations and backgrounds. We're starting a little bit late. We intend to close at 1. Questions have already been put in for some of the subjects. If I can just ask people in front of me on what we call the surfboard, here. If you just quickly introduce yourselves, because some of you will be answering questions from the assembled audience. Thank you. So if I take it from, and then I'll...
I'm Gareth Tanner. I'm a nurse. I'm the team leader for the community mental health team in Chepstow.
I'm Claire Morgan. I'm service manager for mental health and learning disabilities for Monmouthshire County Council.
Pressed, I'll try and do the same. I'm Bronwyn John. I'm the Head of Partnerships and Networks for Monmouthshire and Newport for an Iron Bevan Health Board.
And I'm Hugh Jones. I'm the Operations and Commercial Manager for the Passenger Transport Unit at Monmouthshire County Council.
Thank you, everybody. We're actually back on time, believe it or not, so we've made it some time. And it is Hugh Jones. Hugh Jones is going to update us on the transport issues that you raised from the last forum. We've got a 15-minute slot for that, so there may be an opportunity to take questions. If you want to ask a question, please put up your hand and I'll sort of be making notes. When you go to speak, there is a big button on your speaker. If you press that to speak, when you're ready to speak, the camera will actually zoom onto you. Once you finish speaking, this is the important bit, if you then press it off, because sometimes it can jam the camera and it doesn't go back onto the next person. So therefore, can I ask Hugh to give us an update on those transport issues? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I was fortunate to be present here at the last forum meeting and addressed quite a number of points, of which we hope we dealt with and addressed completely on the day. But having said that, we did receive some questions following the Transport Forum, so I'll just go through those now. Firstly, because the Passenger Transport Unit were involved in providing transport for most of your good selves to the venue, we did receive some feedback on that in relation to time slots and the health and safety element of strapping wheelchairs in and whatnot, which we have taken on board, and I hope you will all be able to reflect on the changes and the improvements that we've made if you've been involved in the same transport. That's the first thing. The second thing, there was a question on smaller buses being able to access Manor Court and the Plas Mawr in Usk. As an update on that, currently the buses which are being used are too long to access this area. This is via Newport Transport Services, as they need the capacity for the school and the college. However, we are in discussion with Newport Bus to see if they are likely to run any smaller vehicles off-peak. So that's to say that once they've met their provision, let's wait for these to come in as well. Do you want to continue, Jane?
You can just come and sit here and leave us on our own. Whoever you want to.
Okay, then, so for the benefit of those that have just joined us, just an update on the situation with Newport Transport Services, which cover the Manor Court and Plas Mawr in Usk, or Plas Mawr in Usk. Currently, the vehicles being used are too long to access this particular area, and the reason for the need for such a large vehicle is that they need the capacity to meet the commitment for the school and college. However, we are in discussions with them to see if they can provide us with a smaller vehicle off-peak. The next inquiry was in relation to Phil Anslow's services, and this was a problem in relation to getting to Neville Hall from Usk. The concerns were in relation to people going via Monmouth and the timeliness of that, especially when the bus runs every 2 hours. The response that we made was that there is possibly a quick route via Pontypool on the 63 service that we are looking into at the moment. There is not enough patronage to warrant a direct bus on a daily basis at present, and unfortunately with the financial constraints on the horizon, there is no forecast at the moment to subsidise that any further to allow that to happen. So it's a status quo on that aspect. The third inquiry was in relation to Newport Transport with regard to revisiting the timetable as employees are struggling to get from Chepstow after 5 p.m. as there are no buses. Currently, discussions are still being held with Newport Bus on this, hoping to revise some timetables with a deadline of July set on that. But obviously, with us not being at that point, we wouldn't want to disclose any commitments at this stage. There was a further inquiry, beg your pardon, with reference to the gap in buses from Chepstow, 1:45 to 5 to 4. I have actually seen the lady who made that inquiry. We're going to speak to hospitals to see if people could be seen in a time frame so that the transport can be more easily arranged. We have contacted them and await some further information and data as to how many trips are undertaken. We have been talking to WAST, WAST, further talks ongoing about solutions for this in a meeting scheduled for June. Right, okay. There was a programme of works scheduled for May, if not before, for the current services which operate in the Monovale area. And the vehicle that's involved at Monovale, and if that is going to be replaced anytime soon, I think the concerns on that were around the reliability and the downtime that users have experienced on that. We did some initial works on that because we're going to consolidate services. However, I'm aware that they are reviewing the transport policy for that. There is no outcome of that at present, and so therefore any rationalisation has been put on hold until any policy has been implemented or adopted, obviously through consultation on that as well. There was an inquiry in relation to grassroots and the capability to go outside of its 15-mile limitation. The question was asked, is there a reason for this? There is. Grassroots operates on a Section 22 permit, and the advantages of that is that we can operate a flexible many-to-many service compared to a fixed timetable route. The downside of it is that the licence only allows us to operate 15 miles from the registered town. Are electric wheelchairs able to use grassroots? That was another inquiry. There seemed to be some confusion as what was a maximum load-bearing weight. What we do with that through grassroots is to do an independent risk assessment on the individual and the equipment being used. Health and safety being at the forefront here, and to ensure that for the user and for the equipment and for the vehicle and that of the driver, that it's all within the capabilities. There's an inquiry on the active travel plan, and the update on that is that consultation will take place during the summer when we have the base maps from Sustrans. Is that right, Sustrans? And the last inquiry which we received was in relation to post-16 SEN transport, where we were looking to change the application process to make it a little more user-friendly. And I'm pleased to say that we have met with our commitment on that. The new forms have gone out. They are in the public domain, and they have taken on board or a lot of, if not all of the issues, all of the askings through a consultation stage from last year. That concludes my updates, and if there's any further questions.
Thank you, Hugh. Are there any questions? I can take maybe two, so we were on time. I'm getting pointed. There's some... Yes, please, go ahead.
In regards to Abergavenny bus station, there's a much lack in sheltering. In bad weather, you've got no overhead shelter. All the terminals you open in the weather. So in the future, I think we should be looking in... I think Abergavenny is the worst around the area, I think, for shelters. And also, the Phil Anslow now, the buses in Abergavenny, have they lost their contract? Is a rumour going? Because where Phil Anslow go, I mean, I live in Gilwan, but I use Abergavenny bus stop every other day. On Gilwan, you've got a bus from Phil Anslow's bus comes 5 to the hour, and then you've got stagecoach come 10 past the hour. I was wondering if there's any chance of the two buses coming together, like within a quarter of an hour, if they could stagger it, like. But anyway, regarding the most important, I think, is the bus sheltering in Abergavenny. I went to Brynmawr to Asda's the other day. Wonderful shelters they got up there now, all covered up people. But Abergavenny is the worst around, I think. That's all my... Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. In the absence of my colleagues who predominantly deal with that area of passenger transport, I can only make generalised comments and come back to you on most of those, if that's okay. I'm not sure what budget there is for the infrastructure of bus shelters. There is much that hasn't been defined for this financial year as yet. We do have a programme of works to, rather than replace them, is to maintain their upkeep, as it were, and to make sure that they are clean and they are sanitised and they are less of an eyesore. There's quite a few bus shelters within Monmouthshire that have been subject to vandalism, and we've been reactively addressing that. I'm not aware of any projects to remodel Abergavenny bus station at this time, but I think suffice to say that if there is any different to what I'm saying, that I'll let you know through Penny and through the forum if there's going to be any change to that. Take on board your comments though about there being shelter. I don't believe I know Chepstow has some shelter. I know certainly Abergavenny doesn't, but I take your point. As far as the Phil Anslow service is concerned, again, it's not specifically my area, I must confess, but I am aware that there is going to be a change in provider. I believe it's going to be Stagecoach. I have some publicity. I have seen some publicity which is going to go out in the public domain for that. But I'm unaware, if I'm perfectly frank, as to the reasons why that has happened. Of course, a lot of the bus services which operate within Monmouthshire now are commercial. There are a lot still subsidised by the authority, but many more are commercial these days. And I think operators decide between themselves, not between themselves, but certainly themselves, whether it is commercially viable and sustainable for them to operate some services if they haven't got the patronage to use them.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Could I get your name for the minutes, please? Excuse me. Sorry, could I just get your name for the minutes?
Mr. Ernie Cusack. Thank you.
Okay, I've got time for one more question. Well, if they're quick, I've got two, but I know you've got your microphone on, sorry. Middle button, I'll take it at the front and then, please. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take just two more contributions to stay on time. So please, if you just say your name as you speak, please.
Delia Hudson, Chairman of the Abergavenny Action 50 Plus. Can you please tell us by what amount the transport budget has been cut for this new year, this year we've just entered?
I'm not confident in giving that information here and now because, as far as is my awareness, that hasn't been completely set yet. I'm quite happy to disclose that through the minutes, but I'd rather not generalise about such an important figure or not be accurate about such an important figure. But I will get back to you through Penny on that one.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to wrap that up because we are actually on time. Thank you to Hugh for coming along. Can I ask, you've got, can we have a digital copy of that so we can put them together for the record? So, yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, please. We're going to move straight in then into the question session, or question time, who knows. We have three main issues today. First one is mental health, then general health issues, and then learning disabilities. So the first question today is from Abby Seabrook. I don't know where Abby is. Oh, there we go, thank you. Have you got your question on you?
Yes, I do. It's written here.
Great, if you could just read it out when you speak. And if the gentleman, yes, could put his microphone on, it'll catch you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Shall I stand up and then you can probably hear me a bit better? Yes, quite a lot of people with mental health issues aren't getting a diagnosis or treatment that perhaps they should be. For example, I'm very concerned with the process of diagnosis for adults with ADHD. People often think that it goes away in childhood, but it goes away after childhood, but of course it doesn't. It's something that's really quite prevalent within the population. Depending on which studies you read, probably estimates between 3 and 4%, so that's probably roughly 1 in 23 to 24 people. So that's quite a high prevalence rate. Individuals with ADHD will be at increased risk of depression and anxiety disorder, criminality, drug and alcohol abuse, as well as marital breakdown and occupational impairment. There does appear to be a lack of understanding about adult ADHD generally, and I have it on quite good authority that there are currently no adult ADHD specialists in the whole of South Wales anymore, even though there is a specialist adult ADHD clinic in Bristol. Now, just to put my own bit of context to my own experience, I've been trying for 2 years to get a satisfactory adult ADHD assessment. It took me about a year to get anywhere. All I have had is a very unsatisfactory experience with secondary services by somebody who knew quite a lot less about adult ADHD than I do. There was supposed to be an adult ADHD service in Newport, which I was referred to, but a year after that happened, I was told that actually it wasn't going ahead. But I've been trying for 2 years to find out if there is any kind of process or pathway for adults with ADHD. Yes, and I've also heard there seems to be a lack of support after someone's diagnosed with autism. Again, where is the support for these neurodevelopmental issues that do carry on into adulthood? Thank you.
Hi. Can I take it in two parts? Because the first part, you talk about mental health issues and people getting a diagnosis and treatment. It might be worth just giving some structure to what mental health services we have in Monmouthshire. So we have 4 mental health teams within Monmouthshire, 2 who work with people of working age or with a functional mental disorder, and then 2 teams who work with people with dementia. And we also have a primary care mental health service, which is linked to GPs. So initial diagnosis and treatment is the responsibility of the GP. So anybody who's worried about any mental health issues their first port of call should be their GP. If their GP doesn't feel that they have sufficient expertise or that they can manage that disorder themselves, they then tap into the primary care mental health service. Unfortunately, they couldn't be represented here today. But they're a short-term intervention service, really, and they will help to signpost people or to actually provide therapy on a short-term basis. And then, obviously, we've got a secondary care service, which is the 4 teams that I was talking about previously, who work with people with more complex needs or perhaps more risky or an enduring mental disorder. So that's the mental disorder bit. ADHD. Sorry. Is that better? Okay. Did you hear my first bit? Did you? Yeah, you caught me? Good. Okay. What we do have, we don't have a specific service for people with ADHD. You're right in that. But I'm grateful to Teresa, who's provided me with quite a lot of information about services that we have for people with Asperger's or autism. Within the local authority, we have a virtual team. So we have a group of social workers spread across the authority who work with people who do have that diagnosis, and we will assess what their needs are and meet those needs in whatever way the person feels is most appropriate for them. The Health Authority do have a diagnostic process now for Asperger's and autism, and they are looking at whether they can provide a service for those people, but it doesn't actually exist at the moment. If people have a dual diagnosis, though, so say they've got a diagnosis of ADHD or Asperger's and they have a mental health disorder, they will obviously be seen and assessed by the mental health team, and the same if they've got an associated learning disability, they could well come within the learning disability service and have that assessment and support from that service. But if it's purely a diagnosis of Asperger's, ADHD or autism, then they would come under the local authority virtual team. There's quite a lot going on, though, in the community for ASD. So we've got parent support groups, we've got the National Autistic Society, who will provide support for people with pre- and post-diagnosis. We've got a support worker called Kemming Compare. And obviously there's lots of information through the website, the ASD website. But yeah, ADHD, not specific. Does that help? Probably not.
Well, it's quite interesting hearing about the autism support, but I haven't really learned anything more about adult ADHD pathways than I knew already.
No.
I mean, I'm involved with the Iron Bevan Health Board anyway as an honorary assistant psychologist, and I've asked around there, I've asked around people in primary care, and there just doesn't seem to be anything, so I haven't really learned any more than I already knew. I mean, do you know if there's any plans to get anything in place?
I don't work for the Health Authority, so I don't know, I'm sorry. All I know is that they are looking at possibly providing support for people with Asperger's / autism. But I think that's Chris Meadows is being appointed to look at that, so it might be worth having a word with him. Okay. Anything more you want to say, Gareth?
Thank you. The next question is, I believe, from Penny. Yes, it's from you, Penny, or on behalf of somebody else.
Excuse me. Well, it's not from me, but it's from quite a few people that have been asking this, which is a general question about the provision for young people 16 to 25 with mental health issues. There seems to be a big gap in that area in Monmouthshire and Wales in general, I think. But
Okay. People who are 16 to 25 would come under the primary care mental health service anyway. So in 2010, the government introduced the mental health measure legislation. So they work with people, children and adults. And as I say, they provide short-term intervention and assessment. There is a specialist service in secondary care that the GP can refer to, and that's the early intervention service. So they work with young people who've got perhaps early signs of a psychosis. That's a Gwent-wide service. Again, it's a health board team. But failing that, I mean, the CMHTs, the mental health teams, work with people who are 18 and above. So anybody who's over 18 would have access to the same services as the general public of any age, really.
Thank you. Our next question.
I think there's somebody who wants to
Pat,
follow
oh,
up.
sorry. I'll let you come in quickly. Yeah.
Gareth Howells from Mind Monmouthshire. Just on that point, we do actually have a service that covers all of Gwent called the Changing Minds Project, which focuses on the transition between child and adult mental health services to adult services. It's not at the high end of mental health services, certainly at the low end around kind of supporting people through schools, through exams, some anxiety, depression, support, and those services are available in Monmouthshire. It's quite a new project that has been funded by the Big Lottery, so that's just really a point to note that service is there as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Pat Johnson, please.
Hi, it's Pam Johnson, actually.
Sorry, Pam.
That's all right, Penny. Yeah, I work from the Stroke Association. I'm bringing this question from many people who have had a stroke that have concerns about their mental health needs. Their needs are often overlooked, and also those of their families and carers who are affected by it. They'd like to ask if there could be a separate assessment made of these issues at the time, as the physical needs are usually assessed and a treatment plan devised, but the emotional trauma is often carried with them for years afterwards. Counselling lists are very long, as we know, and medication is not the only answer. Thank you.
I think the answer for me is that those professionals who are working with that person who's had the stroke should be looking at that person as a whole rather than just addressing their physical health needs. And the integrated assessment, which is the tool that they use, is very much about the whole person. So the person's mental health should be considered as part of that assessment. And there's probably some training for staff members around that they need to be considering how this is impacted on the person's mental health. Because you're right, yes, they're probably thinking about how it's affected that person physically, and what do they need to do to enable that person to go on to live as independently as possible. But yeah, then maybe not considering the mental health needs. I wouldn't really be advocating a separate assessment, because it should be one assessment for the individual. But obviously, if the person's in a hospital, they do have access to mental health professionals, and they can call on us for support if they require it. So it's probably a bit for us about a bit more joined up working, really. Thank you for raising that.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that sometimes the person themselves doesn't realise that they need help with their mental health needs at that time, and sometimes it needs to come from the professionals rather than the person asking.
I'd agree with you, yes. And afterwards, once the person's gone home, you know, and they might be living, you know, their life again, but yeah, they might be left with that depression or anxiety. But they can now tap into the primary care mental health service. So their GP should be monitoring their mental health and making whatever referrals are appropriate for that person.
We've had mixed responses from GPs. Some have been excellent and provided excellent counselling services. Others just give a prescription. And it is very mixed across Monmouthshire.
I think that's always going to be the case, isn't it? It does come down to personalities at the end of the day, but it really does sit with the GP to be understanding the whole needs of that person. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question is from Jane Hole from Abergavenny Action 50 Plus.
That's
please.
right. Yes. My question was, what is the provision of service? From those suffering from Alzheimer's, where can information be found about it? I'd like to add on that it's really three categories. The family and the carers who may notice something going wrong. So you've got the diagnostic procedures and then how to cope afterwards, but also for neighbours and friends who may be concerned. Is there anything that links all three, or will it be provided separately?
Okay, there is actually quite a lot going on in Monmouthshire for people with dementia. The initial step is obviously about getting a diagnosis. And again, initially that sits with the GP So if people have concerns about their own or somebody else's memory, then obviously a discussion needs to be had with the GP. And the GP needs to rule out, there could be physical cause for the confusion. So we would ask that the GP does those tests really to see whether there's anything else going on first. But we now have memory services across Monmouthshire. So we've got one in Chepstow, one in Abergavenny and another one in Monmouth. The GP can refer into those memory services for the person to have an assessment of their memory.
Yeah.
And possibly a diagnosis. They are given pre-counselling because obviously, you know, the diagnosis of dementia can be quite devastating. People are offered a carer's assessment at the memory service. And then, dependent on that person's needs, we will try and signpost them to resources that are in their own communities, or they might need to come into the mental health service for more support. It really depends on the person and their presentation and what support they want with it. Some people don't want a diagnosis. There's a lot, as I say, going on in the community. We've got memory cafes, we've got Singing for the Brain, there's all sorts. I've actually got some leaflets here if people want to pick them up later. The Alzheimer's Disease Society are obviously quite active. We've got an organisation called SHORE who provide drop-ins in Mardy Park and Seven View. So there is quite a lot, but obviously the person has to have the diagnosis first. And as I say, some people are reluctant to get that diagnosis. And, you know, they have the right to choose whether they want that diagnosis or not. You talked about families and carers. Obviously, people can present themselves for a carer's assessment anyway, so the person doesn't have to have a diagnosis or to be within services. If somebody considers themselves to be a carer, they can approach the local authority for an assessment in their own right.
Right, yeah. And helping people to understand that it's something that they can help with rather than ignore.
Well, yes, and there's something that we're actually working on now, which is dementia-friendly communities. And we've got 2 communities in Monmouthshire who we're hoping to develop as dementia-friendly communities initially. And we've highlighted Usk and Raglan as possibilities. Because I don't know if people know, but we've got what's called the Raglan Project, which is a home care project. The home carers work in a very different way with people. It's more about building relationships rather than doing tasks for people. So we're building up relationships with people with dementia so they become more accepting of the care and support. But we're also trying to engage them in their own communities and maintain their links with the community. So definitely we're building up relationships within that village, and we're hoping obviously to roll that out across Monmouthshire.
So people who want to stay living on their own can be helped to do so for as long as possible.
That's what we would advocate completely. Yeah, for people to be able to live in their own homes, still be an active part of their own community, and keeping up the links that they currently have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Our final question on mental health today is then from Sue Gibbons.
Sorry, can I just add very briefly something to what Claire said, which is that the 2 Monmouthshire neighbourhood care networks, which are the newly formed grouping of GP practices and other community services which operate in North and South Monmouthshire, have also identified dementia as one of their top local priorities, and they're funding this year the development of what are called dementia roadmaps, which are an easily accessible system which enables any member of the community, carer, service user, anybody, to actually tap in and have a look at what's available locally for them and what the pathways are. We've only just got that approved, but we'll be working on that over the next few months. So just to add really to what's already been said.
That's quite nice because it makes a contrast to the rumours about doctors all getting their cash for diagnosing it when it isn't true. But so it's a nice counterbalance.
I think
and far more forward.
I think it's actually the case in Monmouthshire that the GPs as a group are very passionate about improving services for people with dementia because they see people all the time, and they see that there are gaps in their service as well. So they are trying to work together to improve things.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Final question then on mental health today is from Sue Gibbons.
Hi. Where is there help for people with mental health issues who do not have social worker or CPN and are embraced to seek help, perhaps MenCap, social services and other agencies could perhaps organise a weekly drop-in centre?
Within Monmouthshire, we've got a very active Mind. Mind are obviously a third voluntary sector who can support people with mental health issues. If you don't have a social worker or a CPN, again, it comes back to the responsibility of primary care. So if you've got concerns about your mental health, you should be going to your GP initially, who will be able to give you some kind of assessment and diagnosis if it's appropriate. And they would also then be able to signpost you to where you can most appropriately receive your support. So it could be that primary care, the primary care team I was talking about earlier, can support people short term, but they can also signpost people to services or community resources that would be available to support you. There are groups that are run, Mind-run groups. There's also some other groups that I've got details of here that primary care tap into. So without answering your question personally, initially it starts with the GP.
Yeah, okay, because obviously I'm new to Chepstow and all that, and obviously I wouldn't know where to start to begin to look for anything like that, with me only being here for 2 years. So obviously with a new person like me, it is difficult to try and find information and stuff like that in the first place.
Have you spoken to your GP?
I have vaguely talked to them about it, but obviously nothing's seemed to have happened about anything.
Okay. I would suggest that perhaps you try and link up with Monmouthshire Mind, who will obviously be able to support you and signpost you to whatever your needs are. If your GP felt that you needed to be referred into mental health services, it would be their responsibility to make that referral. What we don't have in Monmouthshire anymore are drop-ins, where we used to have drop-ins that Mind ran. We recommissioned that service so that it's tailored now much more to the individual.
Right.
So they would be able to engage you in groups that are relevant to yourself, or provide a support worker after referral to tap you into what's actually going on in your own locality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've also got community connectors who work for the local authority, and they might be able to assist you in sort of telling you what's out there and what you can get engaged in.
Yeah. Is there any chance I could have one of those leaflets after we finish? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, sorry, Gareth from Mind Monmouthshire. Just I'll catch up with you after the forum if you like, but also just on the point on the services which we have got, which you mentioned there around group work, the leaflets which you've got for the super groups, which are big groups that we're going to be running with primary care, the other groups which we're running, and the one-to-one service which was recommissioned from the old drop-in model. That's something which Monmouthshire County Council are actually decommissioning in December, which is a vital service for people. It's something which you guys mentioned, is groups that we run. We have a waiting list of 300-400 people waiting for group work, one-to-one work, and actually it's a service that's being decommissioned in December.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily Monmouthshire County Council that are decommissioning it. It's a Gwent-wide So it's the 5 local authorities and an Iron Bevan are producing a joint commissioning strategy. And that's come out of some consultation that we had some years back with people, users of services, and they were identifying what services they wanted to be provided for them for the future. So my understanding of it is that all services are going to be, they're going through a procurement process, so Monmouthshire Mind will be able to still put in their bid to provide services for the future.
Hi. It's linked to the question regarding Mind, and from December, what was going to happen, what was the plan? I know you were saying that it's going to be decommissioned and then recommissioned again, but I was just thinking, what was the plan, and what's the specific plans going to happen from December when it's decommissioned and set up again? Is it going to completely close, maybe for a couple of months and then recommissioned again, or is it going to be set up straight away, or a temporary service put in from January, say, onwards?
I'm not sure that I'm necessarily in a position to answer that, because this process is being led by an Iron Bevan University Health Board. But I would hope that there wouldn't be a gap in service provision. I know that Monmouthshire Mind have some concerns about the fact that the service will end in December and that there might be a gap. I personally hope that doesn't happen. And we're working with ABUHB to ensure that there is continuity of service. We're going through a consultation process at the moment, and I have a meeting in the next couple of weeks with ABUHB to voice my own opinion and those of people in Monmouthshire.
I've got one. I have one contribution right at the very back, please. Thank you.
Sorry, if I could just answer that by saying you're absolutely right. The information system join-up between organisations across Wales does leave a lot to be desired. The national rollout of NHS 111, which is being looked at the moment, which is going to be the replacement for NHS Direct, will have as part of its information portal a server which will allow us to put on local information down to a very detailed level, which is not currently available. So the way things work at the moment is that GPs operate on the basis of a range of information provided to them by different organisations, internal, local authority and health board access via websites so that they can look at what's available, but they don't have one easy access into information. We are well aware of that, and it is something that is being addressed, but it's a huge project, as you can imagine, because what we need to do is to get the detail of information right down to what local groups are out there, how people access services, and it needs to be kept up to date. We're also doing some work with Gavo on developing a local voluntary sector map, which will feed into that process as well. So we are conscious that that is a huge problem, and work is being done to address it.
I think one way we could address perhaps in a simple formula to have a little sector offered put on events for the NHS, for council, to attend so they can see, for instance, the community connected service in Newport. Employed 2 people asking us, and in a short time we've identified 279 supporters in Newport alone for the community.
In Newport, they have actually got the community connector maps information system available in all the GP practices. It's actually been sent out to them, so they have got a connection. The problem is that it's not all joined together. We did some work in Monmouthshire. As I said before, they're very interested in supporting people with dementia. We did some work through the Neighbourhood Care Network recently, working with all the voluntary sector around dementia services, and a mind map went out to the GP practices after that, which had what the options were with little bubbles and what the phone numbers were, etc., which the GPs did find useful. But again, it's piecemeal, and we do need to have a joined-up system which makes it straightforward for people to access everything that's out there.
Okay, I do have one contribution at the back. That was the last one, but I will let you in. But I am clearly trying to stay to time, which we're now behind. I'm trying to get everybody their questions in. So, please.
Williams, Mental Health Development Officer for Gavel. Sorry.
Oh, she's got that.
Okay. I'm Linda Williams, Mental Health Development Officer for Gavel. We have actually got a mental health directory, which is Gwent-wide, which contains services for all of the Gwent for mental health, including a separate section for Monmouthshire. It is available online at the moment under Gavel's website, and it is with GP surgeries as well. However, at the present time, I am updating it, but it will be available again in the next week or so. So it contains every service and what they provide, the organisation provides. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That brings a close to the mental health section for today. So we're going to move on to questions that have been pre-submitted for general health. The first question is from Sarah Griffiths. Can I ask Dan Biddle and Jenny Barnes, Pam Johnston in that order, to be ready with your questions? Sarah Griffiths, please.
I got two parts of my question. What is the provision of transport to and from hospital? How was it booked and how does it work? And is it provided by the ABHD? The second part of my question is, when can ambulances, hospital transport, wait for you to report to reception after consultation, after your appointment? Like, for example, I went to a hospital appointment in Cardiff. I was seen by the consultant, and for some reason, the hospital ambulance said, we're here, but I felt like I was panicking because I was talking to the consultant and then I was thinking, oh, should I go or not? But I'm glad the consultant said, you'll have to wait. But then, is that the procedure, or do we have to go and report to reception? Because it's not very nice for some people like me.
Okay, you'll have to excuse me if I read from my script a little bit for this, because the first thing to say is that the Health Board isn't responsible for ambulance transport at the moment. It is run through the Welsh Health Ambulance Services Trust. So I've taken the information I've got directly from them. So excuse me if I read it, just to make sure I get it right. In terms of the first question, eligibility for ambulance transport is based on a medical criteria which has been agreed nationally by the Welsh Government, so it isn't set at local level. If you qualify for an ambulance, the ambulance service staff at the non-emergency transport centres in the hospitals will actually book repeat ambulances for you. Your first ambulance, if it's the first time you've been to hospital for a particular thing, is booked via your GP surgery. There are other services available which, if you don't meet the criteria for an ambulance but you still have a problem with getting transport to hospital, you can actually contact the ambulance service and they will tell you what other options you have. They have numbers, but then it's up to you to actually make those calls. They won't make those calls for you unless you're actually eligible for ambulance well, you wouldn't need it if you were, if you see what I mean. They'll book you an ambulance if you're eligible, and if not, they'll give you the numbers to see other services. In terms of the way the ambulance service works, what happens is that the ambulances normally are carrying more than one person at a time when they're taking people to outpatient clinics. So they group people based on two sets of criteria, which are where they live and what time their appointment is. That means that people who have an early appointment are sometimes kept waiting for the other people who are on the same ambulance as them to go home. And people who have a late appointment can feel that they're being rushed, which is really what you're describing, because if they're late seeing the doctor, then everybody else is ready to go. The ambulance is timed and needs to try to get away as soon as possible. If that happens to you, what you can do is not go to the reception desk immediately after your appointment and then ring the hospital back and say what happened because you had to get your ambulance, and the hospital reception staff will then sort out your next appointment over the telephone for you.
Okay, if I could ask Sarah Griffiths the next question. Oh, Julie wants to make a contribution, sorry.
I can agree with the comments made by the previous questioner there. I've actually booked transport for a pain management course which ran for 3 hours. They said I had to be ready at 8. They never picked me up before the course actually started. I had to arrive late every single time, and coincidentally they were always late picking me up. So I was ready at 8 and I missed say a quarter of the course every time for this 6-week course, and then afterwards I was kept waiting 2 hours and didn't get home until 3:30. Now, somebody who's quite ill, to be ready at 8 in the morning and not to get home from 3:30 with no food in that process as well is quite difficult. And I think the ambulance crew who were with me said there's been a deterioration in the planning recently, in the journeys, and they were saying a few years ago it used to work really well, but they'd noticed it had deteriorated, that the planning for journeys wasn't as good. And, you know, I'm now very reluctant to book the service because it's so, you know, you're out of the home for so long and you miss your appointments. And they say, don't worry, they just keep you in mind. But if you're actually on a course, they can't stop the course for the other 12 people who are on the course. They don't seem to understand what you're going, and they never have the right times that you're going to be there, so they never seem to have it right. And, you know, it's just been, I mean, today obviously we got transport and we were late, and it's quite difficult to always be late for things because you're relying on a transport service. It's quite frustrating.
I have some sort of difficulty in answering that question because I would be answering on behalf of another organisation. And if there are a range of questions that people have got to ask the Ambulance Trust, then what I suggest is that they're perhaps invited to the next forum or another forum in order to answer those questions for you. If you've got individual issues where you feel a service is not providing the level of service that you should expect, then I would advise you to actually take it up with them. You can actually make your concerns known via the ambulance service website. I did actually go on there last night to have a look before I came today. So if you are concerned, you can do that, or report it via the ambulance reception desk at the main units.
It didn't seem to be an individual concern. It was very the fact that the ambulance crew themselves were saying how bad the planning was. So I didn't feel it was just me. It must be a much wider spread problem than just me. So that's, you know, I wouldn't, you know, it's not worthwhile referring to individual things, but I felt it must be a general problem from what they were saying.
Thank you. Can I ask then for Dan Biddle?
Thank you, Smith. There's a few parts to my question, so I'll try and get through them as quick as I can. I moved to Abergavenny just over 12 months ago. I'm a bilateral double above knee amputee. I moved into a property that wasn't accessible, got in touch with Adult Social Services who referred me to occupational therapy. When the occupational therapist come out and did the initial review, obviously I can't get up the stairs, there's no bathroom facilities in the property that I'm in that I can use. So my kitchen becomes my bathroom and my living room becomes my bedroom. The decision was made to add an extension to the property with a wet room, so I've got full bathroom facilities. That's been going on there for about 9 months, and we still haven't had a builder step foot on site for other reasons. My question is, the occupational therapist, it took us 9 months to get an answer to a question of, well, what can I do for basic washing facilities? Because I've got a 10-year-old stepdaughter, my bathroom's my kitchen, my kitchen is my bathroom, and it's embarrassing to have to get on the floor to have a strip wash every day. I've since had an accident which broke one of the bones in my stump, which means transferring on off the floor is even more difficult. My OT left the service, sent us a text to say she was left with a new number for another OT who never bothered to ring us or make any contact. After kicking off, we got told, oh, you can use Mardy Park shower facilities. My question is, why did it take 9 months to tell me that I can use Mardy Park? Why is there such a disjointed approach to occupational therapy, council surveyors and the architect? Because I'm getting phone calls from the architect saying, well, do you want this and do you want that? So I'm going, well, yeah, great, that's going to be a great benefit. I'm then getting a phone call from the council surveyor and the occupational therapist saying, well, you can't have that and you can't have that because you've only got X amount of funding. It's a lot of stress put on a family when, as I say, my whole downstairs becomes my sleeping, washing, toileting, everything down there, to then be asked to make decisions about a property, to then be told, no, I can't have that because there's no funding. Surely that should be taken on board by the OT, the architect and the council, and you come back to us as me as a disabled person with a solution and a build date. I seem to be doing all of it because I've got a construction background. I'm getting asked to do X, Y and Z, which really, it shouldn't be up to me because I have enough with having to wash on the floor and use my kitchen and a commode to go to the toilet. I'm lacking the very basic hygiene standards of where I'm living. It's incredibly embarrassing for my 10-year-old stepdaughter who can't have friends around because my bed's in the living room. So my question really is, why is there such a lack of information from OTs to service users? If Mardy Park was an option 3 weeks ago when I got told, why wasn't it an option 9 months ago and I could have been having a shower?
Right, there's a lot more questions in there than we were originally given as part of the brief for today, but I have done some digging around from the health board perspective to identify what the position is with people accessing facilities to have baths or showers. It isn't an individual's right to have access to a bath. It is their right to have access to support to help them to keep clean. Normally, access to facilities is only provided where people have a medical reason, such as incontinence or skincare needs. So we don't routinely provide facilities within Mardy Park, for example, or any other facility for bathing or showering to be done. The process that's followed is the assessment of the individual and the home by the occupational therapist, which is what you described. The decision is made as to whether the property is suitable for adaptation, and then it goes into a different system within the local authority for the process of the alterations to be carried out. I can't personally answer those elements of your question, only the bit about the individual rights. I don't know whether Claire has any information about that element of it.
I'm not sure I do, but what you're saying sounds sensible, you know, that there should be better communication between the OTs and the architects and the people who are actually doing the building work, and it should be dealt with by them and not being left to yourself, really. So, yeah, it's common sense what you're saying, really. But I can certainly take that back to the team and express your dissatisfaction with the process. And obviously the team can then look at how we can do it better in the future.
Can I just say that the point, sorry, I don't know your name, sorry, the point you made about aids being available, the bathing aids are great if you can get to a bathroom, but I can't get upstairs. And the skincare, I'm a double amputee, so my stumps need to be maintained. Otherwise I can get infections that can lead to all sorts of problems. So there was a need because of skincare and health issues, and there isn't any aids that I can be given because I can't get upstairs to use them. So a transferable bath seat, any kind of grab rails aren't going to work because I cannot get up the stairs. So again, that's where I find it disjointed. Because of the nature of my disability, there needs to be something looked at to say, well, if you've got a person that cannot physically climb the stairs, there's no aids that are going to make it easier to bathe, because what can you give me? A tin bath in my living room? There's nothing that you can give me that's going to aid me. Surely that then is a set of circumstances that requires the need for hygiene facilities, because you say that nobody's got a right to a bath, but basic hygiene has to, I mean, under the Human Rights Act, there's elements of that. So that there has to be a right for me to be able to use a facility that is available. The problem I had is nobody actually was forthcoming with that information. It was like, well, Mardy Park's available, but we won't say nothing. That's how it come across. I had a gentleman called Reese come around from occupational therapy about, 3-4 weeks ago. He was absolutely brilliant. He came in and said, well, why wasn't you offered Mardy Park as an option? He could see from my disability that skincare was going to be a crucial element of me maintaining my stumps. And when I got injured, I was set on fire as well. So I've got quite a lot of burns to my body. So maintaining that is quite a big issue. So he came in and went, well, Mardy Park's an option. Speak to Lisa Powell at Mardy Park today. The next day I was in there and I had my first shower in 9 months. That cannot be acceptable. I'm sorry to disagree with you, but basic hygiene should be a right for people. Whether or not you've got a continence issue or whatever, I sit in a wheelchair, I sit down for 18 hours a day. Do you know how uncomfortable that is not to be able to wash properly?
Yeah, I can imagine, and sorry, I wasn't trying to be dismissive in any way, but that what I was saying was that the right you have is to be kept clean, and that can be achieved through different means for different people. There are a lot of people who do use their kitchens to keep themselves clean, or for other people to go in to keep them clean. I'm not saying that that is the ideal world, but that is the reality.
But in the kitchen it isn't adapted when the sink's up there.
Yeah. Well, all individuals are obviously assessed through the OT department. I think what we're going to need to do with this is to actually take your specific case back and do some further investigation into it. The information I provided you with is the general information rather than specific to your case. Okay.
Do you want to make a contribution to that?
Just a very quick comment.
So at the moment, I don't even know when the builders are going to step foot on site or what I'm actually going to be having built. Or we've even going to.
Okay. Claire and I will have to take this back and do some more work on it, because it's the occupational therapy service is a joint service between the health board and the local authority. It's part of the integrated team which works across the interface between health and social care. How that's joined into the way that the planners and the builders operate, neither of us are experts in, so we're not able to answer that for you today, but we'll certainly take it away and we'll find out exactly how the system works and be able to feedback via Penny and directly to you exactly what the position is.
Thank you. Can I ask Jenny Barnes is next, and then Pam Johnson to be ready with her question. Thank you.
Hello, Jenny Barnes. I've been asked to ask by Monmouth Visually Impaired Group to ask about cross-border healthcare. What those living in Monmouth want to know is that they can continue to go to Hereford County Hospital for certain facilities without any opposition from the Welsh NHS, as it is most convenient hospital for them and their relatives. And I'd like to combine that with the question that's down on the paper for me to ask, why are the waiting lists for operations and procedures so long? The disadvantages for patients are obvious. People are dying waiting for heart operations, and quite a number of desperate people are cashing in everything that they've got to go privately to jump the queue waiting for procedures. It also becomes inefficient. If you're waiting for an X-ray, for instance, you may well, as I have done recently in the last couple of months, miss your appointment with the consultant because they couldn't fix it up early enough to do it. So how can we make sure that the procedures are done in a timely way? Thank you.
Okay, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to answer 9/10 of what you said. I can only answer the question that's actually down on the question sheet, because that's all I've prepared to answer. I don't know the answers to your other questions without doing more work to find out exactly what the position is. As far as the waiting list for operations, it is public knowledge that operation lists in Wales are longer than they are in England for some procedures, not for everything, but for some procedures. The Welsh Government does set its own targets, which, broadly speaking, our health board does comply with in terms of operation maximum weight. That's not to say that that's what we would want to achieve or what we're working to achieve, because obviously we want to minimise our waiting list as far as we can. There is a lot of work being done within this health board around implementation of something that's been introduced fairly recently by the Welsh Health Minister, which is called Prudent Healthcare. And what that is actually doing is making sure that the pathways that are followed by patients to get to the point where they have their operation done are as efficient as possible. And one of the ones that I'm aware of that's actually running at the moment is around osteoarthritis of the knee, which is an area where there is consistently been long waiting lists, with pressure orthopaedic waiting lists are amongst the worst in Wales. And what they're actually looking at and working with patients to achieve this is to deconstruct all elements of the pathway to speed it up so that people don't have to wait so long for consultation, that before they get to see a consultant, they understand that the operation itself would have implications for them, because it's surprising how many people actually get to the point of having it explained to them what the operation is and then deciding that they don't want it anyway, and they're actually then clogging up the waiting list for outpatients, where there are other things that could have been offered to them that would have helped them live a more comfortable life sooner. And looking then at working with patients to maximise access, because a lot of people, for various reasons, cancel their appointments. The hospital often cancels appointments for different reasons. So looking at all elements of the pathway to actually identify how we can eliminate waste is a big work stream that's going on, and it's actually made a significant difference already within Gwent around that particular pathway. Other pieces of work that have been done, I don't know if anybody here has had the dubious pleasure of having to go to Ystrad Mynach Hospital to have anything done to a foot or a hand, but they've actually rationalised the pathway for that as well, so that they are now having a one-stop shop outpatient come pre-assessment service for people who've got foot or hand problems that can be operated on in one venue. Yes, it's inconvenient if you live in Monmouthshire, but the benefit of it in terms of waiting time is very significant, because you're put straight onto the operation waiting list from your outpatient appointment without having to go through a load of other things as well. And that's actually reduced the waiting list considerably in that area. So we know that money's a constraint. We know that things are not as efficient as they could be in all respects, but a huge amount of work is being done to actually try to improve the way that services are accessed, and that making sure that people who get onto the waiting list to actually have an operation both need and want that operation.
Yes, please. I think that what doesn't seem to be realised is that having long waits for operations or procedures doesn't actually cut the amount of money taken up. It actually increases it. Because if people have to wait a long time, they're likely to have depression, have to give up work, have to cope with considerable pain for a very long time. And all these create extra problems. Their problem gets very much worse. It's very much more difficult to heal a knee, for instance, if your leg's gone crooked while you're waiting. And also that when it's finally done, they are always finally done, although you say some people decide not to do it. I wonder why they do. But when it's finally done, it costs just as much. If it was done 3 months earlier, it wouldn't have cost any more, and it would have stopped people being in such pain for such a long time.
I think that actually is completely understood. I think that, well, I know that the whole thrust behind the Prudent Healthcare Initiative is to actually get things done at the right time, get the right thing done at the right time. And the Health Board has been working towards doing that for a long time. There is a huge demand on services, and I will find out for you, but there is a very significant percentage of people actually who don't proceed to operation. I was surprised when I found that out. I can't remember the exact amount, but we would be able to actually find that out. So there is a big part of this pathway which is about us making our systems better, but there is another part of it which is about making sure that patients are fully informed about what the operation entails, what the likely side effects of it would be, so that they are actually making an informed decision rather than having things done because the professional thinks it's a good idea. It has to be done because it's the right thing for that individual. And so we are trying to actually recognise that we have to make our systems much more efficient in order to, as you say, alleviate people's pain and suffering while they're on the waiting list.
And is it possible then still to go across to England where they're doing them things quicker?
I can't answer that, I'm afraid, because I wasn't prepared to answer that question.
Thank you.
What I can say, that if people have particular problems due to them being on the waiting list, they always have the option to go back to their GP, and there is an expedite system in process with waiting lists. So your GP can contact the hospital if he agrees that you're in unreasonable pain or risk, then that process is there for you to get your operation quicker, but that has to be done via your GP.
Thank you.
Thank you. Final question on general health is from Pam Johnson, please.
Thank you. The proposed changes to stroke services across Gwent have been delayed several times, and our members would like to know why the delays are happening and an update on progress or non-progress, as they're being left in the dark, and these are major changes across Gwent. Particularly in light of the recent press articles in the South Wales Argus regarding closure of stroke beds in Ebervale and County Hospital.
Okay. The Health Board stroke plan is something which has been developed through the Stroke Services Redesign Programme business case, there are some standards that all health boards have to achieve in order to make sure that people have the best outcome after stroke, as I'm sure you know. The Community Health Council has been fully consulted through this process, and they've approved the plan now to move forward to the implementation phase, as have the Health Board. The aim is for the key changes to be in place by October of this year, and what will happen is that there'll be centralisation of emergency stroke care for the first 3 days in one hyper-acute stroke unit, which will be based at the Royal Gwent Hospital. There'll be step-down acute stroke care beds on 3 hospital sites, which will be the Royal Gwent, Neville Hall Hospital and Ysbyty Ystrad Fawr in Ystrad Mynach. And inpatient stroke rehabilitation will take place at the same 3, well, not the same 3 hospitals, Neville Hall, Ystrad Fawr and St Woolas for Newport. And then there'll be a continuation of the community neuro rehabilitation service to deliver early supported discharge for mild to moderate stroke patients. They're currently working on a detailed implementation plan to guide the process over the next few months, working with trade union colleagues and the HR department, because it does involve closure of stroke beds on sites across Gwent, including Chepstow and including Ysbyty and Iron Bevan in Ebbw Vale. It's not intended that there'll be any reduction in staff or any reduction in service. In fact, this is about improving the services for people with stroke by making sure that when they're initially admitted, they go to the best possible place to get the maximum support and intervention from people who are properly trained and experienced to minimise the long-term effects of the stroke. That's why the service is changing. It's all based on best practice. It has been difficult to actually get to this point because it's a major reorganisation of services across the Health Board, where we've actually got 3 different teams providing acute stroke services at the moment, with varying degrees of compliance with the national guidance. And this is all geared towards developing the safest, most effective service for patients' long-term recovery.
Yeah, we're very positive about the proposed changes, but we were concerned about the delays because earlier in the year, around about February, an Iron Bevan Health Board representative spoke to our groups and explained that this was going to start in April, and we hadn't heard anything since that point. Communication seems to have been a bit lacking in this department.
Okay, I know that the final agreement, as you can imagine, this has been politically a big thing for the Health Board to do, and I know that the final agreement wasn't actually made until the board meeting in April. An announcement went out to staff on the 11th of May following that. So they're proposing that these changes are going to, as I said, they all be in place by October, and they're now going through the detailed operational process of actually changing things. So by October it'll be up and running. That's the plan. It has cost a lot more money than the current service, which may have been part of the contributory factors towards the delay, because they've had to look at complete reconfiguration of the bed complement across the hospitals as well, and that does cost money, as well as making sure that the staffing levels are appropriate and that we've got the adequate facilities everywhere to transport people to the right place to get the care that they need.
Thank you. That draws a close then to the general health questions. We aim to close for 1 p.m. today, so we're sort of on track. Next, we have 4 questions from people on learning disability. So, first of all is Mary Allen, and then can I ask Mike Jones, Phyllis Rowe, and Mary Allen to be ready with their questions afterwards. But Phyllis is not here. Okay, we'll take that one. Okay, Mary Allen, please. Thank you.
Many people have said to me in the last few months that their supported hours seem to have been cut back without notification. They have no understanding of why this has happened. And we wondered whether that's due to an interpretation of the criteria, or is it just purely due to cutbacks?
I'm not sure it's either of those, to be honest. I'm not aware of anybody having their services cut without any kind of notification.
Their understanding is obviously when it is, they have no idea why. They might have been told, it might be
Okay.
but they don't know, and it's causing a lot of confusion.
Okay. But everybody who's had a change to their care package will have had a review or a reassessment. I think what's happened historically, and this isn't just a Monmouthshire issue, this is a national issue, is that we've approached the way we've provided services to people with learning disability in a very traditional way up till now. You know, we've provided perhaps supported housing or day services, traditional day services. In Monmouthshire, we want to work differently with people, and we're having some really good outcomes from it, but it is a big change. And we're talking to those people about what do they want to achieve from life, how do they want to live their life, what goals do they have, what interests do they have, so that we perhaps might be changing their care packages. It doesn't necessarily mean that their services are being cut, but it might be that we're delivering the services in a different way to meet the needs that are more appropriate to their individual needs and wants. So that's part of it.
Not many people are on that as yet, and it seems to be maybe you could split the cohort into 2 particular groups. For some people that have reported sort of back to me, they are not things like
My Day, My Life obviously does come into it, and we've got some people here from My Day, My Life who are now living incredibly independent lives, much more geared to what they would want to do rather than go into a place-based day centre. You know, we have spoken to those people. People have now got jobs, they're engaged in their own communities, they're doing voluntary work, whether that's in well, whatever they want to do really, you know, and we will provide whatever support is necessary to help those people to achieve what they want to achieve. You're right, there are some people who perhaps do have more profound disabilities who need more support, and after an assessment we will provide the support that those people require.
There is no cutbacks in their supported hours. I don't understand why it's happening then. I mean, maybe we could talk about specific cases at another time.
Yeah, I think it'd be difficult to get into specific cases here now, but what we want to do is enable people who can live more independently to be able to do that, and we will support them every step of the way to do that. And as I say, you know, people, the difference that's made to some people's lives is incredible. And we will support those people if they require that support.
I'm going to take the next question from Mike Jones, please. Thank you.
Do you want me to read the question, or do you want to?
You can do it.
Okay. So, Mike has been told that he won't be able to get taxis anymore. And we want to know, has the budget been cut for transport? There's no buses in the area that Mike lives in, no public transport whatsoever, and no possibility really of walking, too far to walk to a bus stop. So really want to know what the solution is.
Thank you. I have actually spoken to Mike's social worker this morning just to check what the situation is. Again, this comes back to that different way of working with people, but also what we're doing is we're working with people so that we can maximise their incomes. So that, not specifically around Mike, but for other people, it might be that they're not claiming the benefits they're entitled to. They might not be getting mobility allowance that they're entitled to. So if we can get them mobility allowance, then obviously that's a benefit that's paid by the government to assist people with their transport costs. And there would be an expectation that obviously people would use that benefit for their transport costs. The other bit of it is that obviously for people like Mike, who've historically gone to quite traditional day services, we are working with people, as I say, to engage them more in their own communities. So whereas somebody like Mike is travelling a long distance at the moment to go to a traditional service, there's things going on in his own community.
There is nothing. I mean, like Mike lives, but you live very rurally. Anyway,
Well,
if Mike was to go to either Monmouth or Abergavenny, it would cost at least £40 return for a taxi. So even with the mobility component, that would mean he could go out, say, twice a week. I think that the solution might lie with grassroots as it functioned, as it says it does on paper, which I think Mike would be happy to use. Would that be right if there was a bus that you could use?
Yeah,
Years ago, there used to be the only one was the postman or something that would give
I think
lifts,
they've
but-
explored that specifically for Mike now, and grassroots at the moment won't meet the need. Because I think
what,
they run
what can
too
be done
early.
about that?
Well,
Because I think it's identified. We all know it's a problem, and anybody, I know that other people that live quite close to where Mike does that phone up to try and use a service that's not part of services, but want to use grassroots, and it's
That's
always
right.
a blanket. No, whatever you want to do, it just doesn't function.
We are building up some links with grassroots, and we have had some changes in other areas because obviously there was an unmet need, and that need is now being met by grassroots. So it's something that we can take away, and perhaps, you know, if there's a sort of growing demand in your area, that we can certainly look at that and perhaps develop some links with voluntary sector or some transport organisations to assist people.
And going back to that bit in Mike's question was, sorry about this, has the budget been cut back for transport then, is it?
It's obviously a difficult time for local authorities. You know, we have had budgets cut. That's not necessarily to say that it's been cut in transport. As Hugh was saying earlier, though, that we are looking at transport policies and how we can meet people's transport needs in the best way. So this isn't necessarily about transport costs being cut. It's about perhaps how can we meet Mike's needs in a more local way, that he can tap into his own community, build up relationships with people, you know, that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, which again, when you live somewhere where there is no sort of close neighbours or anything, then it's not, you know, you need transport to get to somewhere where there is a community. Or I think Mike would you feel you're part of the Monmouth community more as your sort of base? So
Yeah, I think Monmouth's probably nearer than, but at the moment, you're travelling to Abergavenny, aren't you?
And Monmouth, in between both.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question I have is from Phyllis Rowe. Is Phyllis here?
Phyllis isn't here.
Isn't here. So I understand, Mary, you're going to ask Phyllis's question. And then I understand the final question for today is also
From me.
Mary Allen. So
I mean,
please.
when it's from me, this is what people are telling me. Then, you know, I'm just addressing the question, asking the question. Sorry. So Phyllis is has told me that she had a review and she had less than 24 hours. We thought it was a month notice people were supposed to get, and she wanted specific people to be at that review, that there wasn't time to put that in place. I've also attended a couple of reviews where I think they've maybe been put on in quite a rush, and it's I don't feel the people whose reviews they were really, they didn't say much. That it
I'll take that on board. I have looked at Phyllis's case notes, and yes, she was given short notice. It wasn't 24 hours, but it was short notice. I'm not aware of a month's notice needed to obviously give everybody in preparation for a review. However, what I would say is obviously people with a learning disability do need time to prepare and engage advocates or
Yeah.
people who can talk for them. So I would suggest that the notice period should be relevant to that individual and give them time necessary. And we'll go back to Phyllis to see whether there's anything that she now would like to contribute to that review that perhaps at the time she didn't feel able to do.
Right. Okay. And in terms of reviews, I don't know if that's right. Are all reviews going to be done again? I heard of this.
Well, everyone should be getting an annual review anyway, you see.
Yeah, I know there was a backlog there, but
There was a backlog, yes. What we've decided to do is to perhaps reassess everybody rather than review. It's a much more robust process.
Yeah.
And it involves, obviously, it's much more complicated, and it will involve the wider community of those people, so that we can be sure after that reassessment what that person's needs are, and that we're meeting them in an appropriate way.
Okay, so it's going to be sort of blanket right across the board. Everyone will be reassessed.
Everyone will be reassessed, but as I say, they should be getting a sort of annual review anyway.
Yeah, which I know, for various reasons has not been happening.
No.
Well, there's quite a backlog, but it sort of defeats the issue if it's put on at such short notice. Then it's not very meaningful.
No, and actually that's why we're saying it's a reassessment, so
Yeah.
it is much more meaningful,
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and it does include people who we wouldn't necessarily perhaps have it as an annual review, but we want to make sure that it's a really thorough, robust assessment of everybody's needs.
Right. Okay.
Mary, you've got one
One more.
final question
Yes.
of today, please.
What is there for elderly people over 60 with learning disability?
We don't have specific services for older people, but obviously we would meet their needs. That they have a right to an assessment from the Learning Disability Service. Presumably they're already in the service anyway, so we will know these people, and we will be reassessing them, determining what their...
Is there an upper limit then to places, say, for like Swancroft Studio, in terms of age?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I've been told there was. I don't know if that can be sort of clarified.
Okay, yeah, we can clarify that. I wasn't aware.
Because I don't know of any service for over 60s that like that, or Green Fingers or whatever, that people can access.
I suppose those are perhaps specific learning disability services, whereas obviously we're hoping that people will engage in community resources. So anybody of the older generation would have access to general services in the same way as anybody else.
So what sort of services would there be in the community, say for somebody in their 60s, that they could access during
Well,
the
there's all sorts of community groups going on in local villages or in towns. There's a whole host of activities going on that people can join. And again, as part of the assessment, we would be looking at that person's individual likes, wants, what's their interests, and we'd be hoping to be able to sort of signpost them to those resources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That brings us end to the general question session, so I'm not seeing anybody wanting to jump in at this stage. Can I therefore ask Penny to wind up today's discussion? Before that, I'd just like to say thank you all for coming. There's a wide range of people from all over the county, those joining us via YouTube and in the future who can't be here today. Thank you for your contributions, your questions. You have put quite a few people from our health services and welfare services on the spot today, and rightly so. That's what we're here for. So I'll ask Penny to wind up and just do a few reminders. And I believe our next forum is September. Yep, okay, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for coming. It's really nice to see a big turnout again, and I hope you've gathered information on both sides, service providers and service users. Just a bit of housekeeping for me is I need to fill in equality monitoring forms. It'd be lovely if you could all fill them in, and also let us know what you think about the forum. There's a few questions there. If you can just let us know how you feel. The last thing is, sorry. No, okay, I can get some more forms. That's no problem. The last thing is I have asked at the bottom of the outcomes form whether you'd like to be more involved in the forum. What I'd like to ask just for now is what people think about the forum being constituted, which would mean that we would have a chair, a secretary, that sort of thing, and run it as a forum for ourselves. I just wondered how people feel. Is anyone in favour of that? If you could just do a show of hands. Right. Okay. Okay. That just gives me some idea. Yes, thank you for coming, and thank you to MCC because they have put on lunch for us.
Please.